meeting to order. Notice that the meeting was properly posted and media representative notified in accordance with the Wisconsin statute section 19.84 1B. And can I get a motion to call the meeting to order?
So moved.
Wendy is gonna have to say second.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, moving on to revisions, approval of the agenda, we have no revisions to be made.
Motion to approve agenda as submitted.
Second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I feel like I'm gonna go real slow, so I can catch everybody. Then moving on to community and staff participation, and we have no staff tonight. Anybody have anything they'd like to say? All right, well, thank you for coming. And then moving on, we'll do the approval of the minutes of the regular session on 12/20/21 and the work session on 12/20/22. Can I get a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And then moving on to the monthly financial reports for our, to approve all the bills. Can I get a motion to approve the monthly financial reports?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So because we did those separately, we don't have to do the consent agenda as a whole.
Right.
Right. And then we're gonna go to new business to delegate the open enrollment spaces.
So this is the time of year where we designate our open enrollment spaces for the upcoming school year. I'm just gonna share the chart that you had in your board docs. If you kept last year's, or if you think about last year's, there's not a whole lot of changes. So the projected enrollment is based on current enrollments in those grade levels. And the open enrollment then are the amount of designated open seats that we would accept. Some of the numbers are, there's some variance between 5 and 10. Those would be the sections of the grade levels that we have 2 sections instead of 3, so we have a little less room for movement. Our special ed numbers at the bottom of the page are all a little low, but we want to make sure that we always have some room for those open enrollment students that want to come into our district. Helps us with our declining enrollment and just overall fiscal outlook.
Can I get a motion to approve the designated open enrollment spaces for 2022-2023 school year? It's a mouthful.
So moved. Second.
Any questions?
Oh, yeah, are those positions, or numbers, I should say, are those flexible? So if we saw an influx in one level and minimal in another, are those moves flexible where we could bring in more from a certain grade if we had less incoming from a separate grade?
They're flexible after July. We can't do anything with making any additions to those numbers until after July. We have never come close to those quotas, so I'm pretty confident that we would be okay. But it's in the summer where the board can extend to include more.
Okay, I just didn't know if we were, let's say there's 10 in one, we're expecting 12, if we could take 2 from another level.
No, the state,
Okay.
yeah, the state unfortunately, and we're recording this, so I won't say foolishly, wants us to kind of designate by grade level, because that's really the case, right? I mean, we would look at overall package, if we had an influx of open enrollees at one grade level that we didn't have enough designated spots for, we certainly could be shifting our staffing within our buildings to accommodate. So I think it would be just a matter, should we ever find ourselves in that position of really working with those families that might be coming in after our designated spots are filled, to work with them through that time frame to kind of keep them interested in us while we can make the appropriate adjustments with, as far as state policy and procedures are concerned.
Any of the kids wanted to do like
Thank you.
virtual Brookwood Park, would that count as open enrollment, or is that a different entity?
It's a different entity. And, so I don't know if everybody heard the question, Katie asked if the Brookwood Empowered counts as some of those open enrollment spots. Kind of a different entity in that, during COVID year, we were able to take students who were, virtual open enrolled to our school district. The state has started to tighten that up a little bit. Pre-COVID, unless you were a charter school, a designated charter school, you couldn't accept, virtual open enrollment students. So Empowered, right now, we really are focusing on a more blended approach, which gives us a little bit of room to move, but my guess will be that the state will continue to kind of, tighten that up, depending on what happens with state charter schools.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. And then moving on to the 2021 audit.
Go ahead, Nicole.
So I am happy to report that our audit report was very boring. The audit report reflects what I had recorded at the fiscal year end, with no significant changes. The one thing that we always have on our audit report, or as long as I'm aware of, is there's always a remark about our internal controls and lack of segregation of duties. I'm happy to report that we've made some changes in our processes, and have actually had 3 things removed from that list of things. The first is payroll. Colleen does all the payroll, and then I approve it before it is submitted, before it's sent to the bank. And, I just cross-check and make sure everything is in line. And then we also have now, we use our software, our Skyward software for all purchasing. And so what that does is it timestamps every request, every approval, and it goes through 2 approvals. First to the supervisor, who knows what the department needs, and then Kelly finally approves every single purchase that comes through the office, which is really great. And then the last, you guys are aware of this, the bank reconciliation and the bank statements that we put in the board reports every month now. That was another thing that he said would help. So those are taken care of for this year. Now, beginning next month, I'm going to add a new financial report for your reading pleasure. It's going to be a balance sheet. Right now, you see assets in that check, in that bank reconciliation, but moving forward, you will see the assets, liabilities, and the equity, or as we call it, fund balance. That's just a way for you to monitor, and I can walk through it a little bit and point out some things so that you kind of know what you want to look for. And then the other thing that he recommended was to have a vendor list that the board approves, so that purchases, you know where purchases are coming from. It's lengthy, so what I'm gonna do is, hopefully next month I will give you the whole list that you can review and approve, and then moving forward would just be additions. I'm trying to get those reports done in Skyward, but it's been a little bit of a challenge. But other than that, I don't really have any other remarks about the audit. I'm really pleased with the way we've tightened up some systems, and Colleen has been excellent working with me. Change can be hard, and she's really stepped up and helped and supported it, so, and so everybody else, so it's been good.
Good. Alright, can I get a motion to approve the 2021 audit report?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Jay, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any questions? Alright, moving on to staff salary, support staff salaries for 2021. 2023.
So this is something, last year, if you remember, the board made a change in the starting support staff salaries, in the area of paraprofessionals, and made some adjustments, trying to creep up closer to that, $15 starting and adjust salaries. I put the proposed salaries in your packet, proposed a starting salary of, 15 an hour for our cleaners and our paras, and, adjusted salaries throughout that group based on the change in starting. I think it's both increasingly difficult to get high-quality paraprofessionals and cleaners. You can see it on the school signs that you drive by, and everybody's looking for those people in that role. And I think the nature of both of those roles has gotten even more important and more critical. Cleaners because of COVID and the level of detail and consistency and good attendance that we need them to have to keep our schools clean. And paraprofessionals working primarily with our special education population, which is, that's a ever-growing need of complexity, so.
Can I get a motion to approve the support staff salaries as listed in our board packet?
So moved.
Can I get a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any questions? Moving on to teacher compensation model for 21-22.
So our teachers who are part of a certified union have a compensation model that enables the district to consider raises outside of the CPI. For their compensation model project, they collect student data, they try a new classroom practice or focus in their rooms, and then they see what impact that has on their classroom data. For those of you that may have been in the audience last spring, you saw some of those compensation model projects we reported on. That's still good work, and that's still good work that teachers do, but this year we've adopted a new educator effectiveness model, and that process is all contained right within the educator effectiveness model. So what I'm asking for the board to do is to waive the compensation model work for this year. The teachers will continue to do that through their educator effectiveness, and I'll work with teachers on developing a new compensation model for 22-23.
Can I get a motion to waive the compensation model projects for this year, which are incorporated in the new evaluation system?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the administrator contracts and compensation.
This is generally the time of the year where the board decides to extend the contracts of the administrative staff, month of January or February. And sometimes we pair that with the compensation piece as well. But for the past 3 years, administrators have gotten the CPI increase. This year's CPI is 4.70, which is almost double what normal CPI is. So I'm proposing a 3% raise in administrator contracts for 22-23.
Can I get a motion for the administrator contracts and compensation?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, then moving on to our COVID updates.
I wouldn't want an agenda to go by without some COVID updates. We're currently sitting at 9 on our dashboard, 9 positive cases, which is a little bit lower, but probably has more to do with the fact that Heather wasn't working today on site and kids were off of school. So so we're right in that 1 or 2%. We made some changes last week, reflecting the new CDC guidance. So we pushed that information out to families last week. Honestly, there was more relief than discouragement just because that length of suggested quarantine time is shortening. We also changed our notification system and have eliminated close contact tracing, which is primarily was done at the middle school. Elementary will continue to be notified at the classroom level. That's what's been done all year. For our middle schoolers, families are notified at either the grade or grade band level if there's a positive case in their grade or grade band, depending on 4 and 5 are together, 6, and then 7 and 8 are together. This is not ideal for families. Obviously, if you find out there's a positive case and your child is one of 110, it's hard to really make a decision about quarantine based on that information. But bottom line, contact tracing with the increased amount of positive cases that we saw last week, if last week is any example, it's unsustainable. My hope would be if it slows and we're still doing this work, that's something that we could come back to. But at a bare minimum, families can have the information and make their decision about quarantine based on that. If they have a medically compromised person that they're living with, they may make a different choice, or quarantine more conservatively. If their child shows symptoms, at least a positive case notice is a way to give them kind of heads up to really symptom check with a different level of diligence. So for the most part, people are understanding about that. I think the close contact piece up here is hard, but realistically, a lot of schools have abandoned contact tracing long before this. Mostly because it's pretty intensive to do it well and to do it accurately. And if it's not done accurately, obviously it's not helpful. The other question that I've gotten this week, because we've had a couple of our neighboring schools either switch to virtual or to close for a couple of days, is, obviously people want to know if that's something that could happen here. We hope not, knock on wood as I say that. It's our intention to be able to stay open, to stay with students in in-person instruction. But we look at any uptick in positive cases as an indicator of, should we be shifting a grade or grade band to virtual. I can't say that we would never look at doing a whole school or a whole district, but I think there's some smaller ways to do that based on positive case totals. And I think the other piece of that I think it's good to know, and especially for people that are either in the audience or on or watching this after, is that numbers don't always tell the whole story. We are very liberal with reporting our positive cases on our dashboard. That means that if there's a staff member who's in both buildings, they get reported as 2 cases, one ES and one MS. If we have students that have been home during their infectious period but go positive, they are on our dashboard. The fact that they're positive doesn't really impact our kids here, but it's always been my intention and Heather's intention from the beginning to almost give worst case scenario on that dashboard, so families knew that it doesn't get any better than what they see on the dashboard. But realistically, if we have 3 cases in a grade level and all 3 of those kids were not in school during their infectious period, that's a very different scenario to decision make around than all 3 were here for a whole week and now they're positive. So the numbers are one piece of it, but having that other bit of information is super helpful. And Heather fortunately gets all that information. I can't say enough about how it makes such a difference that our families are open and honest in working through some of those situations with Heather, because it really enables us to decision make better for all of the students in our district, and to really know what we're working with. The other piece that some of the districts around us have faced, and that could happen here too, is staff shortages. We have some staff or some subs that we have contracted through this year, so we already have some pre-filled backups. But, you know, as that virus spreads, when there's more outages, coverage becomes more challenging. I said in my public message this morning, and I say to staff frequently, we are so fortunate that our staff, they just step up and they cover for each other. They take on extra responsibilities when they're here, and our feeling is that, you know, we are a Brookwood family. We are, but also the people that work here are. And, you know, when you're out, somebody will step up for you, and when you're here, you step up for somebody else, And I'm sure other districts have that as well, but, I don't think they do as nice a job as our people. We're just really fortunate, and I think, you know, why it's good for parents to understand that is not just because it helps us to stay open, but those teachers and staff members that are here are working crazy hard. They're working through their prep. Sometimes they're giving up a lunch or lunch minutes here and there. They work hard all the time, but this COVID and this recent spread of COVID is certainly not making anything easier. So be kind to your school folks. So it could happen. We hope it won't happen. We haven't been close. Last week we were not close to having any kind of virtual or closure. So, you know, let's just hope. There's schools around us where the rate of positive cases is significantly higher than ours. I thought ours was high last week with 16. That was our peak, and that just, there's districts that are higher, and it's not, you know, everybody's doing the best that they can, and everybody's doing a good job. I just feel, right now, at this very moment, feel pretty fortunate that our rates are as they are, and let's hope they continue. So, COVID update. Any questions about any of that?
No.
So that can be just an informational item then.
Moving on to communication reports from the principals.
Just a couple of quick ones, here to report out. The first one is, right now, we're putting together our first semester report cards, and those will be going out, coming up this week here. So those will be out to families, by the end of the week. Another one is just to inform you, as a board, I had an opportunity last week, Wednesday, to attend, online seminar here for averting targeted school violence, and basically going to that and looking at our practices, where we're at and what they're recommending, and having some of those conversations with professionals in the same places. The nice thing about that is it affirms a lot of the things that we are doing here, and one of the things when they're talking about averting it is the focus on mental health. So working with our students, knowing our staff, and having those open communications, that's the number one deterrent, is having relationships. So I left that, not that you ever leave something like that feeling good, okay, but leaving that feeling that we are doing the right work, and setting that up to make a safe environment for our kids, for our families, for our kids. So that was great to kind of check against that with the work that we are doing. And then the last one is the starting before break, and continuing some after-school adventure activities with art clubs. We have a community member that's going to volunteer to help out with some evening soccer for little kids coming up. That'll be pushed out. So bringing some of those fun activities back and getting going with some of that in the after-school adventures. So just wanted to report on that one. Does anybody have any questions for me on those or anything else? I'm looking there, they don't see me. I didn't turn, any questions? I turned my back. All right, thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to share with you today some of the added supports that we're able to put in place for our students for semester 2. I've had a million conversations with our staff members in like the last, I would say, month, to say, what do our kids need and looking forward, what can we be doing more of, and then really trying to get creative with our schedule to craft that to make it happen. So I wanted to share with you some of the more robust supports we're able to provide moving forward. So we are going to be starting, some math support groups in grades 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. Really, these aren't like interventions per se, but it's more like with our younger kids, to pull them out during a time of day where they can be working on fact fluency and some of those basic operational skills that are going to contribute to their math ability moving down the road. And then with our 7th and 8th graders, Mr. Lewis is going to be running Math Lab, which essentially for those kids will be like a double dip into their math lesson that they're already getting in class, with some little, some added attention in a smaller group. So we're excited about that. We'll continue on with Read 180 for our identified students in grades 4, 5, and 6. Just recently, Ms. Arsham informed me that we have 5 kids who are graduating from Read 180, so they've reached kind of what, the benchmark is. As we are moving those kids out, then we go right back to filling those seats with other kids who are in need. So we'll be able to continue doing that as we move on. Ms. Olbrey has been busy brainstorming how to provide some additional social emotional supports for our kids. She's starting 2 groups, one for 7th graders and one for 8th graders for select students called RISE. These are students that through surveys have indicated that they might need a little extra help with coping strategies, dealing with stress and anxiety, depression, amongst other things. So she's going to carve out time in her schedule to be pulling these kids and meeting with them periodically. I'm excited about that. We're continuing on our social emotional curriculum for our 4th and 5th grade students. So they will actually continue on with guidance for a full year. That's typically only a half a year, but they're going to get that in semester 2 as well, even though they've had it all of semester 1. And then our 6th graders will be starting their guidance rotation for semester 2 as well. So I'm excited that we have these supports in place. In addition to that, we've done some other things too, providing resource study halls for some of our special education students with their case manager in more of an intimate setting, so they get a little more attention as opposed to being in a ginormous study hall. We have double staffing our study halls whenever we can in our schedule to have more adult attention in there to help kids with what they need. And then we've refined our after-school academic lab, and really are working more with like a team of teachers that are going to be in there more regularly to work with students. So all of these things I think are going to be to the benefit of our kids. I'm really excited, and kind of what Kelly already has said, like we have a yes staff, and when we say, hey, we've got these needs for kids, this is what I feel like we need to do, I mean, the answer is always yes. And I have been in other districts, and that isn't always the case. That is a yes and a firm yes without the stomach ache of, oh, okay, yes. And we really have the best staff around, and they are working so hard for our kids. So kudos to them, and huge thanks to all of our teachers, our paras, everybody who's pitching in. It's been beautiful to watch. So questions for me?
For the math lab, like Mr. Lewis and doing those things, like what about kids who are out for quarantine, like is that part of that can go and get extra help for those things, or is that academic lab?
No, so this is identified students. We used their most recent MAP data and then also some classroom level data to pick a group of students that would regularly meet 2 to 3 times a week, either on a white day or a blue day, and it's actually built into their schedule as a related arts class for them to take.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, more of a comment, but I like to hear about kids graduating from a program that we have implemented in the school. It's just proof positive that program is working. So love to hear stories about stuff like that where kids are graduating and able to move on. We're able to bring more kids into that same program, and hopefully by the end of the school year they're able to graduate as well. So pat on the back to all those involved.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll pass that along to Stephanie Arsham. She's our Read 180 teacher, and she's done a phenomenal job. So.
Well, just thank you to the whole staff for being a guest staff and joining and jumping in when they need to and doing what has to be done. Not everyone is that way, you're
No,
correct.
it's awesome. It really is. Like I'm not just blowing smoke. We have the best teachers around. We do.
Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Okay. Moving on to business manager.
I just have a couple.
Back at it.
Report. employee or anything else for quite a few months. So that's good. Our employees received their W-2s and 1095s on the 7th. They were also given an option a few months ago, if they wanted to receive their W-2 digitally, they could do that. If they wanted paper, they could do that. We had a few handful of people select the digital. But the nice thing now that we digitize them is employees can go in and print their own. Like if they lose their W-2, they can print
That
it
was mine all the time.
I'm
sure my personally.
A lot of people do. So they can print both the 1095 and the W-2 from Employee Access and Skyward. Yeah, it is. So just small little things we're trying to improve on in the business office. It's a continuous thing so that we can best support instruction.
Any questions for Nicole? Moving on to superintendent reports.
Just a couple of things. Last week, we got started with having our open fitness center hours on Tuesday and Thursday night, and then also during Sunday open gym. We had some people, not on Tuesday, but on Thursday, we had some people there. We did hire a former Brookwood student, Nathan Cannell is our fitness room attendant. And he has also been doing some recruiting from his grown-up friends to come in and work out, so that's great. Our open gym numbers on Sunday were the highest they've been, so it's so lovely to have families come and just really enjoy that space, as well as walk the halls or do the fitness center, and then some of our older middle school students come even on their own, which I always think it's important to, when we can, to give our kids an opportunity to do something like that in a safe environment, but that they can have a little independence as well. So that's been lovely. I want to share with you, I've started to put together some kind of a timeline for some of this referendum information. So I shared with you, Helen and I are working to get some staff pre-recorded spots that'll go out on social media in February and March. I don't know if you saw it, but on the front page of our intersection, we actually had an article about a referendum from the regional news. We have a new reporter in our region. So I'm excited about that. The article was accurate, so I'm excited about that, and early. So I think that's wonderful. Our next issue of Genoa City News comes out the week of February 1st or January 31st, so we'll have referendum information there. I've got 3 times kind of designated where we'll have some sort of information station at parent conferences. I'll be at the village board meeting on March 10th, and we'll share something during citizen comment. And then also at our 7/8 concert, we'll have an information station if people have questions. We'll do our community luncheon on March 4th. That's a day with no school, so if people want to come in and have lunch and hear about the referendum, that'll be a time for that. We'll do 2 community Q&As in March, push out one last flyer the week before voting, and then April 5th is our vote date. So I don't know that people are going to have a ton of questions for all of these different things, but I think the important thing is that we're out, it's publicized, that people keep hearing about the referendum coming up, because I think that's, and Karen, I think you mentioned it the last time, sometimes it's difficult to remember to vote in April. That's not what feels like a normal time. So anything else that the board may want to add? We talked about it a little bit at work session, different things to be doing.
Not at present time. Do you have anything you want to add?
And there will be plenty of opportunities for shared speaking at those. You know, one of the things that we heard last time is we want to make sure that it's not just my voice they hear, but other admin, teachers, school board members. So we'll get a little bit more strategic about that as the end of March comes closer. And then last week, this week, and probably into next week, I'm doing my one-on-one meetings with staff. I didn't do them last year with COVID, but this year, just wanted to take 20 minutes and meet with each individual staff member, just get some information about what the district can do to support their work, both professionally and with engagement. just gonna get a feel from them as to what makes our district a great place to be, and it's, you've heard from this table about how valuable our staff is, but that's almost the first answer that everybody has to what makes their district the best place to be, or a great place to be, is, teachers recognize it with each other, they like the colleagues that they work with and see the value in that, so. These individual meetings are something that I started, early in my superintendency, and it helps to kind of get, some trend information across district about, trending needs or interests. Certainly, building principals do this same work, they work, more intimately with their staff, but in a small district, it's really nice to be able to sit down with everybody individually, and, like I said to one staff member today, it was a very pleasant meeting, but sometimes those meetings may not be pleasant. If people have feedback that's maybe against something that I'm doing, or not easy feedback to hear, in a small district, the value is voice. Everybody has a voice. And so, I hope that you lay the foundation, that I lay the foundation of having people feel comfortable expressing needs and things that they have, opinions about our district, even if they're not always happy. So, just, the more information we have, the better decisions I can make, and the more likely we are to move forward, so.
Well, it's good even if it's not pleasant, that they're comfortable enough to tell you what's bothering them, so things can move on, whether it gets fixed or not, just so their voice is heard. That's for most people's problems, like they don't feel their voice can be heard.
Sure.
So that's,
Well, and I always send out, the questions are sent out ahead of time when they sign up, and, I have several staff members that, I don't know, make notes ahead of time, and, I don't wanna give the impression that there's some laundry list of, grievances, but I think they do take it seriously, and I think the reason they take it seriously is they've seen decisions come from these small meetings in previous years, I think that's the piece of empowerment, when you see something happen in your district that you had a voice in helping to bring forward, that's how I think teacher leadership is really strengthened within an organization. And we talk about shared ownership, but teachers share that as well. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I think too, sometimes those hard, I think too, sometimes those hard conversations is where the most growth happens as well. Especially people feeling like they can be heard, and even if it's not something that's easy for them to say, or that the person that they're speaking to, that it's easy for them to hear. So, those conversations are a great way for our district to grow and to become stronger. So I love that you're able to do those, and that's a comment that comes from you, that, that difficult conversation is worth having, so that's good.
That's all I have.
right. And our next regular meeting will be on Monday, February, any board members have any comments? Sorry, just totally skipped past us.
Well, you and I think, are going to the
The convention?
down in Milwaukee on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we're looking forward to participating in some great seminars.
That's nice that it's not virtual this year, because that was hard.
I was gonna say,
It did not like
it's
that.
not snowing.
That's not snowing, because then they're done that too. Anything from you guys? Feel like I'm yelling, and I know they can hear me right here. So I just yelled to the screen. All right, well then we're gonna go on to our regular board meeting on Monday, February 24th at 21st, at 6 p.m. And then our work session on Wednesday, February 16th at 6 p.m. as well. And then can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, well, thank you, everybody.